let's talk about workflow here. So now I would want to sharpen this image before I was to save this out in terms of output. Now I also want to save the work that I have already, so I want to make sure that I save it first now and have that file on hand if I want to come back and pick up on any of these editing techniques. Maybe I want to change the eye color, maybe I want to change the background exposure or color. I could come back and do that with this file saved out with layers. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, give it a spot on my desktop, and then make sure that Layers is turned on and save. I'll just replace that because I already saved it earlier. And here you have a file that has been saved and ready to go. Pick up where the editing left off, and that's great. But let's say our client wants to have a portrait made and printed out of this file. So that means that I have to come back, open this file, and then save it out for an output. Now for a print output, I want to sharpen this image with that in mind. And sharpening is to be done at the very end of your workflow. And it should be done after you flatten your file and after you resize your file. So here I'm going to go to Layer, Flatten Image. And that's going to flatten all of that work. Don't worry because we already saved it out with layers and it's backed up. But now I just want to output this file for a client. So now I want to resize this image size, change this to inches, and let's say that this client wants a 8x10 image, and then I'll just give a 1-inch border there for the height and say 9x6 inches for this picture size at 300 resolution should be great. I'll do OK, and that image is ready to go out. But I still need to sharpen this image. I did this at the very end because if I were to sharpen before I resized, then all of those pixels would get rearranged and that sharpening wouldn't be as strong of an effect. So now after I resized, I can come in, make a copy of my background, call this Sharpening, and then go to Filter, Sharpen, and then Smart Sharpen. So I'm going to navigate at 100% here to my primary element, which is the eyes of this portrait. And you can see that at 2 pixel radius, I resized this image down, and now things are looking a little bit too crunchy. So I need to turn that radius down, and I have to turn the overall sharpening down of this image. Here's my before, clicking and holding, and then waiting for it to snap in. Now here's my after. So I think that's a pretty good improvement. I might go down a little bit with these different sliders just to find that I'm not getting too much information, and then I'll hit OK. So there's my sharpening here. I'm gonna go to 100% just so I could see it. Here's my before, here's my after. Now for this, I don't want to sharpen the pores of this image because this is a beauty portrait. So I'm going to create a layer mask by going to the Add Layer Mask icon. I'm going to invert that mask by double clicking on the mask and going to invert. And then I'm going to paint with white using a brush. Here I'll pick my brush tool and then paint with white. Want to make sure I don't have a sharp edge, and then I'm just painting in that sharpening here. And for a beauty portrait, I just want to bring out the details of this portrait that matter to us in terms of connecting. So that's the mouth, that's the eyes, that's these details that should be sharpened in an image. But notice how I'm not sharpening here or here, because that's not really something that I would want to sharpen. Here, making the hair pop out a little bit more. And then those details pop out even more. And so here's my before, here's my after of my sharpening. And I could blend what I did a little bit more by feathering the edge of my painted mask. Here I'm going to option click on the mask just to show you how that effect is coming out. And then fit to view, and there's our sharpening. Now for me, I can save this file out with this sharpening layer and use it as a proof if I need to sharpen more or less based on the print that was produced for this file. Then I'll have this ready to go, I'll have the mask ready to go, and then I can just pick up where I left off. So this produces a lot of information if you're working non-destructively like this. You have your work file that you can open up with all of those layers. Then you've condensed your work file, and then you have a file that is to be saved out with your dimensions of your print in the file title with sharpening in it, so that you know that that's your layers with sharpening. And then finally you can do your final print after you find out how much you really need to sharpen your image based on the paper, based on the output. So here, let's just do that. File, save as, TIFF, and then I'll say 8x10 sharpen here, and I'll just save that with layers. And now I have this next file that I can open up and know that it's 8x10 inches and it's the sharpening layer. And then finally, if I made my proof and I wanted to go ahead with this and send this to the printer, I would want to go to Layer, Flatten Image, File, Save As, and then put Final here, and then Print. And then I'll save that with no layers, and that will be my final file. So that's the workflow.